Alright, so we have one more example to finish up section 3.1, and this one's a little bit different than the other two in that it is a three-part inequality. So we have two different inequality symbols and almost separating into three different sections. And the way that I like to approach these three-part inequalities to kind of knock out two birds with one stone, so to speak, is you can solve both sides at the same time. Well, in other words, really you're solving kind of all three sides. You're going to be doing things to all three sections, the left, the middle, and the right, simultaneously. So I guess the best way to explain inequality like this is imagine that it was just a single inequality. Take off this left-hand part, and we just had the minus 3k minus 1 is less than or equal to 5. Well, what would our first step be here in solving that inequality? The correct first step would be get your non-variable term, the negative 1, get it over to the other side. So you'd want to add 1 to cancel it out here, and then you'd have to add 1 to the 5 over here. We can still do that. It's just instead of just adding it to the negative, adding 1 here, we also have to add a 1 over on the left-hand side of this inequality to the negative 2. So we can kind of approach it the same way if you like doing it this way, is drawing your lines down the two inequality symbols instead of drawing it down a 1. So it's now we have to keep all three things balanced. So if we're going to add 1 to cancel out the negative 1 here, as we said, we have to add 1 on this side, onto the right inequality, and then we have to add 1 over here to the left inequality. So then combining our like terms, negative 1 and positive 1, those cancel each other out. Negative 2 plus 1 gives us a negative 1. Bring down the less than or equal to. Minus 3k in the middle now, because those two canceled out. And then bring down the less than or equal to again. 5 plus 1 gives us 6. Okay. So now once again, let's ignore one of the inequalities. Let's say we just had minus 3k is less than or equal to 6. Well, we have a coefficient on our variable k, and we want to get rid of that coefficient. Anytime we want to do that, it's the same approach. We divide by that coefficient. So in this case, we have to divide by the negative 3. So not only are we dividing here by a negative 3 in the middle, we have to divide on the right inequality, the right side of the inequality by negative 3, and on the left side of the inequality by negative 3. In doing so, we get our k, our variable, all by itself. It's now isolated because those negative 3's divide each other out. So in the middle, we're left with just a single k. On the left-hand side, negative 1 divided by a negative 3. Well, negative divided by a negative always cancels each other out, makes a positive. 6 divided by a negative 3, that will give us a negative 2. But now we have to remember that rule of dividing by a negative. You have to flip the inequality symbol when you do so. So instead of a less than or equal to symbol here, it actually become a greater than or equal to symbol. Instead of a less than or equal to symbol here, it would become a greater than or equal to symbol. So maybe make a note of that as well. Once again, we flip the inequality symbol. Whenever we divide by a negative. So that technically makes sense how we're seeing it, but typically when we have inequalities written, we have the smaller number written on the left-hand side and the larger number written on the right-hand side. So usually you'd see this negative 2 over here on the left. So in order to do that, we would write it as negative 2 is less than or equal to k, which is less than or equal to positive 1/3. See, the inequality still opening up to the 1/3 and not opening up to the -2. It's opening up to the 1/3 and not opening up to the -2. So it still means the same as what we had before. So this is more likely how you'll see the inequality written. And then if they wanted an interval notation, it'd be just given with brackets. -2 to 1/3. Brackets on both sides because we have less than or equal to symbols. And that is all we have for section 3.1.